Today's video is brought to you by my stupidity, ladies and gentlemen. I am not a smart person. I am a very stupid individual, and I'll fully admit that, and I'll fully let the world know that about me. The only intelligence I'll ever claim to have is that of computer sciences and engineering and computer safety and whatnot. That's the only thing that I'm ever really good at, and it's the only thing that I feel comfortable talking about anybody's ear off, alright? That's where I sit in. That's sort of my lane, and I like to stay within my lane as much as I can. If it's something on this channel that I absolutely want to keep pushing is I hate getting political. I hate talking about this stuff. It's really not what it is. Despite how political the world has gotten, I try to stay away from that stuff because I'm simply not knowledgeable. I hate it when I come across people on the internet or anywhere that try to act like they're intelligent about something when clearly they aren't. So I'll fully admit that I have no idea when it comes to, most political things. I really don't care to increase my intelligence there, nor do I care to really dip into it. The only times this channel, I think, really gets political without me cringing overboard is when we talk about things like net neutrality, when we talk about laws, when we talk about laws pertaining to the internet and computers. And today it's all about that. Today it's a law about internet, it's a law about Canada, it's a law about social media, it's a law about computers. And ladies and gentlemen, Canada has a new spooky looking law that could actually regulate everything that Canadians post on YouTube, Snapchat, TikTok, Pornhub, whatever you want to call it, okay? This is a social media spooky bill. Or at least that's what I've been reading all over the news right now. It's been trending on Twitter, it's been trending all over Canadian Reddits, it's been trending in my local news, and even my parents have asked me about it, okay? So I decided to look on the internet, I decided to check it out real quick. Now, of course, every Canadian news agency, CTV News, is outright saying the Heritage Committee, who is responsible for this, will not reverse changes to Bill C-10, despite the public outcry, okay? You've also got Twitter users who've been making it even super political. Bill C-10 is meant to reduce disinformation, not censor legitimate opinion. It's aimed at broadcasters, which we'll go into real quick. Trudeau's plan, Washington Post, by the way, for the internet. More patriotic propaganda, less choice for users. And of course, when you read into it beyond the headline, it's totally different than what you may expect. Global news. New broadcasting bill could regulate everything, experts say. And of course, the experts do say. Now, if you go to Toronto Sun, they weren't holding back. Bill, intent is censorship. And when you look over here, an entire user who is Michael Geist, who apparently is with the University of Ottawa, freedom of expression under attack. National Post, debate shut down, allowing regulation of social media content. I mean, it's incredibly, it's intense. It's intense watching this play out, right? I mean, experts are warning the free speech is at risk. So I decided to do something that I don't think most people do, and I decided to go right to the source, okay? I've been so used to getting internet scams that I always check the email that's sending it to me. I always check the website. I always check 3 or 4 different news sources to get everything, okay? And so I decided to go to justice.gc.ca, which is a Government of Canada website all talking about the charter statements. Now, of course, they have plenty of bills. If you've already noticed, I've clicked on Bill C-21, which is all about firearms, okay? But today's bill is Bill C-10, which is the amendment we're looking at. So I wanted to read a couple things real quick. Now, of course, throughout this bill, it's not super long, it's worth the read, but basically, if you look into the new and updated regulatory requirements for broadcasting services, okay, the bill clarifies that the act applies on the internet. Okay, it's on the internet, we know it, it's on the World Wide Web, all right? Clause 1 would add online undertakings as a distinct class of broadcasting undertaking subject to the act, okay? Online undertaking would be defined in the Act as an undertaking for the transmission or retransmission of programs. And I assume programs basically means video, music, whatever you want to call it, over the internet to the publics as a mean of broadcasting receiving apparatus. Users of social media services, important point, who upload programs, so let's say that you uploaded that goofy TikTok of you, for sharing with other users, and are not affiliated with the service provider, meaning you're not a TikTok employee, I suppose, or directly associated, but even then, I don't know if that's vague enough to include TikTok or YouTube partner, I'm just saying, would not be subject, again, if you're not affiliated, to broadcasting regulations in that respect. Now, just reading that line alone tells me, okay, fine, absolutely. If my dad uploaded a cat video onto the internet, I don't think my dad would be targeted. But when they say not affiliated with the service provider, what about partnered YouTubers, Twitch streamers, Facebook uploaders, and all that? That's vague. I mean, clearly, you have to understand something about laws. They're not, a lot of them are vague, and this is where, like, okay, I'm kind of freaking out a little bit reading it. It's too vague already. So now that we've read the sweet legal breast milk straight from the Canadian titty itself, it's safe to understand that this situation pretty much says that it's exempting the average person from this broadcasting regulation. Again, when they mention things like unaffiliated users, all right, I'm going to be real with you. It means like, are you excluding YouTube partners, Twitch streamers, or anything of that nature? Because they are very clearly, financially, and legally, at least affiliated with the system. Unless, of course, YouTube straight up says, yeah, they're just contractors, not explicitly affiliated with us. It's a weird situation to get into. Now, this next paragraph, when they talk about the commission with new powers to regulate online services, which, admittedly, when you get the government involved here, especially the Canadian government, it's a bit cringy, I'd say. Now, here they're talking about the power would include conditions about the proportion of programs that must be Canadian. This is really important, and I'm going to get to it after we're reading this. Clause 8 would amend the Commission's powers to make regulations, including a new power to make regulations requiring broadcasting undertakings to register with the Commission. See, earlier they said they'd update the Commission's powers as they relate to traditional broadcasters, so dying media. Clause 10 would give a commission a new express regulation making an order-making power to require persons carrying on broadcasting undertakings to make expenditures to support the Canadian broadcasting system. Okay, so this is actually rather important, all right? So now that we've read all of the headlines, now that we've literally read the legal paperwork from the titty itself of the legal system of Canada, let's get down to what this really, really, really is all about, okay? So let's go back and let's read one more thing from Michael Geist himself, who has been referenced in like 10 different papers at this point. The expert, the internet law expert in this case. He was basically responding to somebody who tried telling him that Bill C-10 basically already excluded us anyways, to which he said, read the provision they voted to remove. So let's read it. So this is apparently something they voted to remove. He's outlined it in red. Programs, so again, videos, music, pictures, whatever, are uploaded to an online undertaking that provides a social media service, so something like, say, Twitter, by a user of the service, okay? So the person who's uploading to Twitter, the video to Twitter, who is not the provider of the service, so again, the user, or the provider's affiliate. So what are you talking about? Like a partner for them? Like a Twitch streamer partner? Like a Twitch affiliate, maybe? Or the agent or mandatory of either of them for transmission over the internet and reception by other use of the service. It really feels weird how they constantly have this dialogue that says not the where they keep mentioning not the provider's affiliate. I understand it's probably some old school legal jargon, but I feel like it can vaguely be attributed to also include a YouTube partner or a Twitch partner or anything of that nature. It just feels really weird reading it. Now, again, that article that they were removing, that line, somebody actually responded from the government themselves, a spokesperson, said the intent to remove that clause concerns notably the music streaming that is rendered possible by social media platforms. So places like Spotify that create playlists, for example, where content uploaded by individual users is curated by a platform and is deemed of significant impact. That platform, not the users, could be subject to the Broadcasting Act. The bill, as it has been amended, would continue to exempt individual users from being considered broadcasters. So they've said that, and I guess their intention is when you go onto Spotify or Google Play Music or Apple Music, I'm sure that there's AI-generated playlists. I have them with Spotify, they generate playlists, and I assume their idea is to get the algorithm, at least in Canada, to shift to allow Canadian content more. Now, this law already is fucking weird, okay? It's vague, at least to me so far, but it seems like it's not so much targeting the censorship side as it is targeting the ability to keep these old, bloated, traditional, dead pieces of media still alive. Now, this is the Canadian Media Fund, Canada Media Fund, and I know a lot about the Canada Media Fund because I've worked closely with it. I know people that have worked closely with it. This is something that I'm all too familiar with. So if you don't know what the Canada Media Fund is, let's go further into the entire situation. Now, in Canada, we have something called the CRTC, okay? So the CRTC is the Canadian Radio, Television, and Telecommunications Commission. I guess the closest thing for America would be the FCC, right? If we're going to be equivalent there. Now, in this case, Canada already has these really stringent requirements on music and Canadian radio at this moment. So, for instance, this is again straight from crtc.gc.ca. I feel like I have to keep mentioning this because people don't go to the official sources half the time. And over here they say radio plays an important role in introducing listeners to new music and artists. I guess it does. And they've introduced 7 types of radio stations: commercial stations, campus, community, ethnic, native, CBC, other non-for-profit stations. Now, if we go around and look into the scenario, you can see that in the commercial radio, which is where Spotify or all these services may fall into, read this real quick. English language and French language stations must ensure that at least 35% of the popular music they broadcast each week is Canadian content. Commercial radio stations have to ensure that at least 35% of the music between 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday is pure blood Canadian content, buccos. In fact, Radio Canada stations have to ensure 50% of the popular music broadcast each week is Canadian content. We have some of the most stringent Canadian content requirements ever, okay? And this doesn't just relegate itself to just radio. It goes to TV and films and movies as well, right? The CRTC presently requires 60% yearly and at least 50% programming aired daily from 6 p.m. to midnight has to be Canadian content, Canadian origin. In 2011, actually May, the CanCon requirement for private television was lowered to 55% yearly. Canada's public broadcaster, the CBC, still maintains 60% CanCon quota. So to understand in Canada, this is an important aspect, okay? This is a real important part of it. Netflix recently just came out to say they're opening the first corporate office in Toronto. And I think Netflix is at least understands that at least in the future, and again, if you look at Bill C-10, this has been brought forward since November 18, 2020. A lot of these companies are kind of prepping for it. Now, this entirely affects YouTube, Facebook, and whatnot going forward, okay? And to understand, for instance, Google, literally, who also, again, owns YouTube, raised free speech concerns, right? This potentially extends CRTC regulation to all audio and audiovisual content on the internet, the company said in a media statement. We remain concerned about the unintended consequences, particularly with regards to the potential effects on Canadians' expressive rights. And given the fact that the law we read above was a bit vague when it came to partnered and non-partnered, non-affiliated individuals. Again, I have no idea why that remained vague. It's just weird out there why that stays the way that it is. And again, it's just bad to have that level of vagueness in anything, whether it's a YouTube TOS policy or it's actual legal law. Now, again, this wasn't just Google that outright said this. They're actually still waiting for the final, sort of revision of all this to come out. And then Facebook gave a similarly vague response, right? They said, we haven't had the chance to fully review the changes, all right? They asked if they'd even consider exiting the Canadian market. They didn't even rule it out, apparently, to them. Now, to realize what's going on, Google and Facebook are going to be the ones that are turned into this. Google, Facebook, Netflix, Spotify, the big American, tech companies that run social media services around the world are going to be treated as broadcasters in Canada if this passes. And, even if they're not targeting social media users, for services like Facebook, for services like YouTube, for services like Twitch, all right, that rely on user-generated content to run, what the fuck are they going to do in order to regulate any of this? How are they going to regulate content of this variety? For instance, it would probably mean if YouTube is to operate in Canada, they might have to follow CRTC guidelines for YouTube original productions. I have no idea. If they have any dealings with streamers or content creators, they may have to push Canadians in some weird way. It's an entirely weird situation we're looking into. I don't know what Facebook is going to do, but let's go down into it. A lot of people have said this combats misinformation and whatnot. And given the fact that it's a CRTC, guideline, like Canada's Radio and Television Communications Board is looking at it, yeah, it's probably going to stop misinformation, whatever you want to look at. I'm one of those people that I would like all internet content to be freely available so I can do exactly what I did in this fucking video alone, which is go right to the source, go look at 10 different avenues of information and truly piece together the entire cloud of this entire puzzle in my own head with all the facts that are presently available available, especially straight from the Canadian government. I gotta show you the fucking URL once again. It's straight from the legal titty of Canada. Now, of course, ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad that I waited this long to make this video, just a little bit, because I wanted the situation to actually develop. Canada, the feds actually do plan to change the bill so it's crystal clear social media uploads won't be regulated. Now, of course, this is very much related to money in regards to that Canada Media Fund that I talked about. At least that's how they're framing it, where they're talking about this bill targeting professional series, films, and music, ensuring that large broadcasters, online or not, contribute to our broadcasting system is a crucial element in asserting our cultural sovereignty in English. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to be real with you, okay? If you're going to bring platforms like YouTube under the act, these companies apparently have to fork over a chunk of their profits to that Canada Media Fund, which isn't even appropriately handled, and that's a whole different story right there, okay? Apparently, they want to also make that Canadian content more visible on the platform. I don't know whether that's changing the algorithm, I have no idea. But when you got the CRTC involved, and when you hear things about countering misinformation or whatnot, what are you going to do? Are you going to tell YouTube to regulate certain social media posts? I mean, again, the law has that vagueness to it where, like, I guess some people can look at it as censorship. That's why they got to make it very clear that this isn't what it's for, because YouTube, a lot of these social media services already do as much as they can to counteract all the misinformation that's out there. I don't know what more Canadian governments want, and I don't know what they're classifying as misinformation on their end. You know, again, I like to say, and this is probably my hot take, I'd rather have the internet be free and open, because I'm with the EFF, I'm with all these organizations that prefer the internet to be as unregulated by every federal government as possible. I think that's the best way to handle situations. Honestly, focus on education. That's the best way to counter these misinformation campaigns that run on the internet. I understand the heart's probably in the right place, but giving this level of vagueness is just too much. So now these guys want to treat us like, we should be under broadcasting regulations. And whatever side you're on, this law as it is that exists is not a good choice, okay? It's a little too vague. There are points where they talk about unaffiliated users that still irks me, okay? How do you deal with that on platforms like YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, where their bulk content is user-generated? They have partnership agreements. How would you handle that with content creators that are partnered? Are they unaffiliated, or are they directly affiliated with each of these broadcasting services? And then by being affiliated, are you going to specifically target those fucking creators? That's the problem. That's the issue. The law is just vague. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to talk about this, but I wanted to really look into it. And I feel like I have appropriately. I've looked directly at the source, straight from the legal titty itself. I have to keep showing that, okay? Because I feel like that's more effort than 95% of the people that just read an article. There is some good that I guess can be derived from a law like this to understand what they're trying. Like, if you're trying to help out the artist, it's noble as fuck. It sounds noble as fuck. But it's such a vaguely written amendment, and the fact that you're getting rid of some amendments that could absolutely help out social media users in general, at least allegedly here, is just vague as fuck to me. So it's a weird law, all right, and it cannot pass the way that it's written, okay? And if this scares you or me, believe it or not, it should scare you or me, and it should probably scare Google, Facebook, and any big American tech company 100 times harder, because those guys are what this is really written for. But because it's written for them, they're probably going to be just fine, because they're huge and big. Ultimately, given our affiliation with these social media services, the creators you love that belong to Canada might be hurt the hardest. So yeah, that's all I really have to say. It's a weird situation. Canada, you're doing some weird stuff, man, let me tell you. But I still love my country, and all I can really do is write to my MP and local politician about not passing this shit. And that's as much as I can do, because because I'm just one Indian man in the face of the Canadian government, and that's all I can really say. So, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to talk about this. Felt like, I actually had expertise regarding this situation, so, I felt it was worth a video. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like it if you dislike it. I am